I want to now turn to our special guest. Mr. Tom Nostra is here from FranchiseOPT, Franchise Opportunity, I imagine. Tom, welcome to the show, and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Sure, it's really a pleasure to be on the show.
Welcome to have. We're glad to have you.
Franchising can be confusing. I don't know that it was intentionally set up to be confusing, but it's confusing nonetheless.
Right.
With the Wall Street Journal, I think said there's over 3,500 different franchises. So when someone goes to look for a franchise opportunity, they in many cases don't know where to start.
Right. It's a maze.
Yeah, it's a maze, and it's really a challenge. And you know, we all know McDonald's, we know Dunkin' Donuts, we know Subway.
Right.
But there's a lot of very good franchises that maybe people don't know because they're kind of niche franchises. And my job is to try to help people find something that matches, you know, what they're interested in. You know.
And how do you start? If someone comes to you and say, Tom, you're an expert in franchises, you know, my wife and I or my brother and I were looking at, you know, maybe buying a franchise, you know, how does that meeting go, the initial meeting?
Sure. What we do, Pat, is, you know, I'm going to steal an idea from Stephen Covey. You know, we're going to begin with the end in mind. What are we trying to accomplish? What are they trying to accomplish? We spend some time talking, and typically 45 minutes to an hour, just understanding, do I want employees? Do I not want employees? Do I want it to be owner-operated? Do I want it to be home-based? What am I looking for? We spend some time with that, and then we also spend some time with, I have a service that I subscribe to that people I work with can go online, take a kind of a personality test, if you will, and it's not going to say pick this franchise or don't pick this one, but it's going to say these are the types of franchises that you may want to look at. You may want to look at a service type franchise. You may want to look at a franchise that you can do as an absentee owner. So it will help me then isolate 3, 4, 5 different franchise ideas that they may want to take a look at. Okay. And they may well be franchise ideas that they would have never thought of.
What's the profile of the type of person that is attracted to a franchise, even knowing that there's a broad range, and that might be successful at operating one? Sure.
The age group is getting older, okay? We may, all three of us, be in that age group.
Thanks, Tom.
It's your 45-year-old to 60-year-old person is the people that are buying franchises, okay? They're, in many cases, already business owners. For a business owner, it's not as big a leap of faith. For a non-business owner, it may well be a leap of faith, okay? And very often I'll talk to people that say, you know, I've had this same business for 10 years, but I just want to expand. I want to do something different. And, you know, we'll help them find an option that might be of interest to them.
I know you mentioned already a couple of the, you know, the very, you know, famous food franchises like Dunkin' Donuts and McDonald's. And there's a lot of food franchises. So I think you're right. People do think, well, that's what you franchise. But as you mentioned, there are many of other types of companies have nothing to do with food. And can you talk to us about some of them?
If you think of walking down Main Street and looking at all the businesses that you'll pass on Main Street, chances are good that they may have been franchised. Okay, now that doesn't mean that they'll all have be part of a franchise, but they may be franchised. You know, my wife and I used to own franchised hair salons. Okay, it's honestly it's a category I like a lot. You know, if you want to get involved with auto repair, you know, the Amcos, the Meinekes, Precision, those are all franchises. If you want to get involved with cleaning services, there are great cleaning service companies, home inspections. Those, a lot of them are franchised.
I see a lot of strip centers like Mailbox.com. Are they like Mailbox?
Many of them are. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And these are some very solid, good franchises. And I don't confuse people by saying they're all good, because really they're not.
Sure.
You know, if you've got 3,500 franchises, you will not have 3,500 home runs.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But you'll have I think a core group that's good. I was on the phone with someone today. He's part of ServiceMaster, and ServiceMaster owns quite a few different brands: Mary Maids,
Yep.
Furniture Medic, ServiceMaster Clean. Anyway, we were talking to him about a gentleman in Hawley, Pennsylvania, okay, up by Lake Wallenpaupack.
Mm-hmm.
And I spoke to him about this gentleman, and he said, you know, Tom, our franchise won't work there, okay? And that's good information, okay?
Yeah, right.
And he's, you know, he said to me, here's the reasons why. So now I can say, okay, we'll take this one out of the cart. We're not
Right.
going to present this to him.
Right.
So that's part of the service that I provide.
I think it's interesting that that input came, you know, from the, what do they call it, the master franchisor?
franchisor.
Or the franchisor, because, you know, some folks may think that, well, you know, they'll sell them to anybody. At the end of the day, though, they don't want unsuccessful franchises either.
Right.
That you know, that doesn't bode well for them, and you know.
Yeah, good franchise companies don't want unsuccessful franchisees.
Right.
Okay.
Well, are there some?
Well put.
Are there some that are very selective in terms of who they'll accept? Like
yes.
McDonald's. I mean, I don't know, but Pat mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts. I would my sense would be they probably have a higher standard.
They have a high standard, but some of the lesser-known franchise companies have very high standards as well. You know, for someone to be a franchisee, it does take a certain personality. If your
Right.
personality is such that you say, I'm just going to run this thing the way I want to run it, that's really not a great personality,
Right.
especially for a large franchise.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Now, when someone that looks into a franchise, let's say they meet with you, I'm sure there's, you know, different levels and different kinds of costs associated with becoming a franchise owner. What are some of those costs? What are the levels of different
Sure.
costs that they need to be aware of?
And whether you start a franchise business or you start a non-franchise business, there's going to be costs that you're going to incur.
Sure.
Those costs, in many cases, you know, what a franchise business will be, there'll be some costs associated with joining the franchise. It's called, you know, the franchise fee.
Right.
And then there's going to be costs associated with it for ongoing royalties. Typically, it's and you know, we can look at franchises that are $30,000, $40,000, and we can look at franchises that are, you know, $1 million.
Right,
Okay.
right.
And we have good franchises at $30,000 and $40,000, and we have good franchises at $1 million. It
Right.
depends on what someone's ability is to, you know, financial ability is, but
Right.
also what their interests are. I mean, I'm recommending today to a gentleman a franchise probably no one's ever heard of, called Scully Mitchell, but it was a good match for him.
Right.
And it's a small franchise, and I tend to be cautious with small franchises, but this is one that shows very well in their franchise disclosure document.
Okay.
And that is, the franchise industry is regulated by the FTC, so there are lots of rules and regulations about what franchise companies can say and what they can't say.
Okay.
And a lot of that information is available in a franchise disclosure document.
Here's an interesting question I just thought of was, or is success rate for people to start a franchise and still be in business 5 years later?
Well, it has always been bantied around that it's a 90% success rate. I will never, ever, ever say that. I mean, I'm
seems
saying it on
extremely-
TV,
that
but
seems really high.
yeah, but and I'm going to tell you why I would say I don't like to get into that, but I can tell people how to find it out, and that's part of what I do.
Sure.
If a franchise is, if a certain franchise company is there, but it's a third owner in 5 years, was that franchise a success or was that a failure? Okay, it's still there, and
Right.
based on that, it's a success. But the reality of the situation is it may not have been a very good location, or whatever it is, or maybe we had some bad franchisees. The best way to evaluate a franchise is study the franchise disclosure document. Critical document. Franchise companies must send it to a prospective franchisee, and they can't even ask them to join the franchise until they've had it for 14 days. Great.
What's in that document? Let's talk about that document.
Sure. That document it's 23 sections. I'll tell you the biggest and most important thing.
Are they all the same? Are they
Every franchise company has to comply with the structure of that
Okay.
document.
All right.
So it's 23 sections. Probably the most important sections are in the back of the book, if you will.
Right.
Old people say it that way. But and that's listing all the franchisees, all of their phone numbers, all of their contact information. So if someone is interested in buying a franchise, don't listen to what the franchise company has to say. Don't listen to what I have to say. Speak to the franchisees, and they will tell you, this is what I have experienced.
So they're all listed in there.
They're all listed in there, yeah. So that's an important section. All the costs associated with startup. And good franchise companies will put things in there like working capital. It's like you're going to start a business. It'd be great if on day one that business was profitable, but it's not going to be.
Right.
So working capital gets calculated in, franchise costs, cost of equipment, machinery, whatever that franchise is. I mean, in vogue right now is franchised frozen yogurt.
Yeah.
Not one that I'm a huge fan of, but if somebody wants to twist my arm, I'll talk to them about it.
Right.
But the cost of equipment is pretty high in those, so that adds to the investment in the business.
Mm-hmm.
How would someone go about evaluating, Tom, whether it be a startup or take over an existing operation?
That's going to be a personality issue, okay? And in all candor, there are going to be those people who will say, I really want to buy an existing business and an existing franchise. My wife and I sold off, we had franchised hair salons for 8 years. We sold them. We had 8 years of track record, okay? And we were very fortunate. We had 3 people that were bidding on our business because we had a pretty good track record.
Now, how does that work? You're a franchisee of XYZ Hair Cutter.
Great Clips.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now you're in control of this location.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing well. You're making money.
Yeah.
Now, how do you sell it to somebody else? What do you sell them? Your document, basically?
Well, the beauty is we're just selling a business like you would sell, Joe's plumbing business, okay? We're selling a business. Now, they have to be part of the franchise.
Right.
Okay, so in our situation, we had 3 current franchisees who were interested in buying our business. We had...
So they knew what you did. I mean, they knew the business.
We know
they just want another
Right.
location.
we knew that everyone knows the numbers, okay,
Right.
and they know what our numbers were, and they liked our locations, and that would be an advantage of a franchise. I can certainly talk to people about advantages and disadvantages because there are both.
Now, is the franchisor involved in that transaction at all?
No.
Not at
No.
all.
Well, no, that would be probably incorrect. Yes, because there is a transfer fee.
Okay.
But
So they collect some money.
yeah, they do collect some money. But in terms of a lot of input, not a lot of input.
Okay.
Talking about the franchisor, how often do they get involved in the structure of how the business is to be operated?
That's going to vary depending on whether you're talking about a big franchise or a small franchise. Okay, and it's a huge difference. And if someone...
Can you give us a couple examples?
Sure. I mean, if you don't mind, I'll talk about my Great Clip salons.
Yeah.
Great Clips is a big franchise, 3,100 locations nationally. So a fairly large company.
Uh-huh.
They do a very good job controlling their franchisees and the way we deliver our services.
Mm-hmm.
They do a very good job with it. Smaller franchises may not be quite as structured. There's pros and cons. Let's talk about McDonald's. If you go into McDonald's,
Right.
you know what the decor is going to be like, and you know what the food is going to be like. Okay, and they strive for consistency.
Yep.
A good franchise will strive for consistency. And like in my Great Clip salons, they had a lot of input into how we operated our business.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Interesting. So, your business, you help people. So now that we have that understanding, give us again a brief outline as to how you help people
Sure.
in that process.
Yeah. Again, if someone, when I speak to someone that's interested in looking into a franchise, we do a lot of the homework for them as to options that they may want to take a look at, franchise options.
Right.
And I'll be introducing them to some ideas that they would have never thought of. Look, I had a copier company. I'll call it a copier company. From 1982 to 2000, I owned this copier company, sold it to Toshiba Corporation. The next thing you know, I'm running franchised hair salons. Okay, now that's
Right.
that's an interesting transition.
Sure.
But it met the criteria. I wanted multiple locations. I wanted a business I didn't have to be in all the time. So this kind of met the criteria that I had established. So I begin trying to figure out what somebody wants to accomplish, and then we work with them to get that. Now, the beauty of my services, honestly, is they don't cost the person I'm working with anything. Okay, there's no charge to them, and that's because the franchise companies offer me a referral fee if they decide to join that franchise. So someone can access my knowledge,
Right.
and it doesn't. It's kind of like a real estate agent, if you will. They know the real estate market locally, and,
Right.
and they will take people to see certain homes or whatever.
Now, the various costs that you mentioned, the franchise fee and some, working capital costs, can they finance any of this? Is there any opportunities to finance this?
Yes, yeah, and most people do.
Okay.
Most people, it'd be very nice if everybody had enough money to plunk down to, buy the business. That would
Right.
make life a lot easier for people like me. But that's just not the case. So they do finance. Now, they go through financing companies like, an awful lot of people will convert a 401k or an IRA, okay, and that is completely legal and can be converted to purchase a new business, okay?
Okay.
So it's a completely legal way to do
Sure.
it. The SBA, Small Business Administration, has loan programs that are available for people buying franchises, okay? And the SBA has an approved list, okay? So if someone says, hey, I want to buy a franchise, and it's on the approved list, it makes the financing package a whole bunch easier, much quicker, actually.
Yeah.
So, and certainly you can use your own bank. You can use, your relatives.
Yeah, anywhere you
all
can get it, you can
that.
get it.
But financing is an important part. Another factor is some of the really good franchise companies that we represent
Right.
will finance a portion of it as
For you.
well.
Right.
And I'm just going to use ServiceMaster because it is a company I kind of like, and they'll typically finance up to about 80%.
Okay.
So,
Interesting.
so I'm on the phone with them today talking to this about this gentleman in Pennsylvania, and part of the appeal was that they would finance a good portion of the business.
Tom, it was, I'm sure, very valuable to our viewers. I hope you learned a lot. Maybe we just scratched the surface. Contact Tom if you have an interest in pursuing a franchise of your own.